Welcome to Twin Peaks The Gifted
and the Den
podcast. My name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM. Fit and Trim on Twitter. And with me, as always,
yes,
the homeless person I hang out with at casinos. It's Mork. Mork, how you doing?
Hey, I was hoping you were going to call me the prostitute that you hang out with sometimes when Naomi Watts isn't available. But I'll take it. I'm proud to take it. And you can find me at Extraordinary on Twitter. That's extraordinary with the W in front of the final R.
We are covering on today's podcast Twin Peaks The Return, Parts 3 and 4. Part 3, Call for Help. Part 4, Brings Back Some Memories. Mm-hmm. We are going to spoil it, all of Twin Peaks, books associated with Twin Peaks.
Everything.
And let's just get to it right at the top.
Let's do it.
This 2-hour chunk, we saw 2 hours last week.
Yes.
We got 2 hours early thanks to the Showtime Anywhere app.
Mm-hmm. Which we pay for.
That is true.
In full, which we pay for.
As long as we're not under oath. Let's keep saying
that. On the record.
So let's get to it, Mork. Mm-hmm. I'll go first.
You go first.
I'll rank them.
Okay.
I did just personally enjoy Part 4 more than I did Part 3.
Okay.
But together,
yeah,
I'm going to give them 8, what I like to call
8
double J's out of 10.
Double J's?
Joyful jackpots. That moment, and there's a lot in these 2 hours that I really, really liked, but that moment of, dare I say it, whimsy. That's an adjective which we don't describe enough.
Sure.
Twin Peaks Season 1 and Season 2. Mm-hmm. I used to say before Twin Peaks The Return aired that I don't care what it is as long as it's good. Mr. Jackpots.
Yeah.
And that whimsy and that fun and the fun that it almost feels like it's flowing out of Kyle MacLachlan as he is Mr. Jackpots.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Now, that said, there's a moment in episode 4 which doesn't involve my good buddy, Mr. Jackpots, but it's actually been my favorite moment of the 4 hours.
Oh, I'm guessing.
But let's guess. But I'm really high, 8 out of 10. I still have problems which I talked about last week that I'm going to get to.
Yeah.
8 out of 10 for me. So let's get to it. Can you guess what my favorite moment is?
I'm going to guess it's the same as my favorite moment.
Ooh, okay, good.
Which is when Cole is interviewing Mr. C in the prison.
Ooh, that is a good moment. No, I'll go ahead and spoil it now.
Damn it.
Once again, maybe I'm just too old school, too attached to the previous show. Mm-hmm. My favorite moment of the first 4 hours is when Deputy Bobby comes in and he sees Laura's photo.
Oh, yeah.
And suddenly we have Angelo's
Badalamenti.
Thank you. His wonderful score.
Sure.
And Bobby's breaking down.
Bobby's been going to acting school these past 25 years.
Dana Ashbrook, my good buddy.
Yeah.
And so, God, I really loved that moment.
That was a great moment. That was a great moment. I enjoyed that as well, but I really did like Cole and Albert and Tammy, who sure has mastered the FBI wiggle as she strides across rooms. But they were interrogating in sort of a strange prison capsule. It wasn't a typical interrogation setup. No. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I'm going to break it down a little bit more.
Okay.
And I noticed that you rated the first 2 episodes, which was really just one seamless episode, 2 hours long, but the first 2 you rated as a 7. And
that's right.
And so you've gone up to 8 on average. I rated the first couple of 10 because it just made me want to watch everything else. That, for me, that was a big win, and I was very excited and grateful to see that. Episode 3, I'm going to give a 7, and episode 4, sadly, a 6.
Whoa, you and I are completely, like, we're not watching the same show, or we're not having the same reactions.
Well, we're doppelgangers when it comes to... apparently this podcast will be Mr. C, and you will be a combination of Mr. Jackpots and Dougie.
Teach me how to Dougie.
Which brings up a whole new set of questions, which we hadn't even contemplated before.
First off, the gifted.
And the damned.
Want to give our thoughts, prayers, and cherry pie to Manchester. What they went through this week. If you're listening to this in the future, Just search Ariana Grande, Manchester. It was true tragedy. We've got some friends, wonderful people, double L's.
Double L's.
Loyal listeners listening in the UK and in Manchester in particular. And just wanted to give them a shout out and tell them we're thinking
about you guys.
Amen.
For sure.
And then, Mork, before we get to a little bit of feedback.
Yes, Bubba?
I wanted to start a new segment here on the Gifted
and the Damned
podcast. And I'm going to call it Plot Check Me. Rather than fact check me, it's plot check me.
Oh, man, this is good.
So
I like this.
Before we even get to...
This is what you've been doing in the lab all night. I love it.
So before we even get to parts 3 and 4, I just want to go through what I believe is the plot. Forgive me for saying it confused like this. What I believe is the plot we're looking at here in Twin Peaks: The Return.
Okay.
So...
that's a bold... God bless. That's ambitious.
Things we got to think about from the Red Room. Our good buddy, the Giant, even though he's listed in as question marks in the credit, he wants us to pay attention to sounds in our house that are coming out of this phonograph. He wants us to remember 4:30 and Richard and Linda.
Right, okay.
Leland, also there, our good buddy, wants us to find Laura, who vanished somewhere.
Okay.
He said, I'm using us, but obviously he means what you would call a good Cooper. And our good buddy, the Arm, he tells us 253 time and time again.
Yeah.
All right. So those are things there. Now, in South Dakota, there are a couple things. We got our good buddy, Hank Fillmore.
Yeah.
Hank Fillmore is upset with Harvey, and Hank was going to see Chip.
Right.
Now, these are the guys who are outside Ruth's apartment that the cops talk to. Good old Hank Fillmore, they talk to him. And so why am I even mentioning this as part of the plot? Well, in parts 1 and 2, we saw the couple, Sam and Tracy, there at the Glass Box Lounge. And then we went back in time later and saw them again. And so I'm throwing out things because there's a chance good old Hank Fillmore, we're going to follow up on him and Chip again. I kind of hope so, or else I wonder why are we following this, but I'm just throwing that out there as part of the plot.
Okay.
Also in South Dakota, Mr. C has Ray working for him. Why is this? Because Ray has a female contact who is Bill Hastings' secretary. Mr. C wants this information from Bill Hastings' secretary. Bill, when he was being questioned by the cops, said his assistant was named Betty. Mr. C seems to believe they're geographical coordinates. Daria, Ray's partner, tells Mr. C that she's going to get the job done on Betty's car now that Jack has wired the car. Of course, Daria and Jack were killed by Mr. C.
Right.
Ray is in prison. Before Ray went to prison, he told Daria that Philip Jeffries called him, and he says Daria has to hit/kill Mr. C if he's still around tomorrow night, thereby implying that Mr. C hasn't gone back to the Black Lodge like he's supposed to.
Right.
And that Ray and Daria will split $500,000.
Okay.
Someone who he believed was Philip Jeffries calls Mr. C. He says he missed him in New York.
Right.
This makes me wonder if this is like the creepy spirit in the Glass Box Lounge missed Cooper because Cooper went into the glass box and then disappeared, and then a couple of minutes later the scary monster showed up in the glass box. Is that the person who missed him in New York?
Right.
Either way, the person on the phone told Mr. C he's going back in, we assume to the Black Lodge, and that this mysterious person will be with Bob.
Okay.
Mr. C needs Hutch and his wife Chantel, and Mr. C is fooling around with Chantel in a specific area. Theoretically, this ties to the geographical coordinates. Finally, in Vegas, we have Mr. Duncan Todd gave his assistant Roger money to tell this woman, her, that she has the job. Is that woman Daria? Is that woman somebody else? Is that woman...
Tracy?
Right. Is that woman Tracy? Great point. Is this woman possibly Janie?
Yeah.
Who we meet. And then in Twin Peaks, Log Lady says to Hawk that something's missing. Hawk has to find it. It has something to do with its heritage, and it's about Agent Cooper.
Right. Something from the case. Something from the... Yeah.
So is that the plot? Listeners, plot check me. I think that's what it is through parts 1 and 2.
It's okay.
Go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/double P podcast. That's the word double, the single letter P, the word podcast, plural. Facebook.com/double P podcast. Plot check me and tell me if I'm following this thing correctly.
Yeah. Please do, because even if I have the right answer, Bubba's not going to listen to me. So maybe he'll listen to some of our
We're going to
double
crowdsource this.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's the way to go.
Now, we're going to have a feedback show, hopefully next week. So all your thoughts about parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, get them to us. But I want to get to some feedback right off the top. Why don't you read this first tweet we got, Mork?
Okay, this is from Jeff T. Johnson, otherwise known as @RayGone, Gonne. on Twitter saying, "The log does seem different. Not bigger to my eye, but less trunky. New actor, it seems. Hashtag RIP Catherine, triple heart." So, yeah. So
last week, you thought it was a new log.
I did.
Here, Jeff on Twitter is saying he thinks the log has been replaced with a different actor, probably a younger log. That's the way Hollywood is. Always replace it with a
log. Yeah, definitely. And cheaper, probably.
Right. And so I didn't want to hear it. I couldn't assume it. But perhaps, Mork, like with most things, you're correct, and I've messed that up.
Every once in a while. Or the alternative. No, there is no alternative. Anyway, so you were going to say.
Oh, I was going to say we got some other feedback, and this is all kind of grouped together. Our good Double L loyal listener, Doug E. wrote, "I think you guys are focusing way too much on the Langwood Lynch thing. It's almost like you didn't really enjoy the show at all. On the flip side of that, another great Double L, loyal listener, Tale as Old as Time, who's at Jolly Roger Rescue on Twitter.
Oh, good.
They wrote, almost skipped ahead when I thought we were going to have to watch Jacoby paint the back of those shovels, but I restrained myself. And then finally, we had this great note from Jubel, who's at Jubel_Brousseau. Brousseau. I hope I'm spelling that right. Everybody should follow Jubel on Twitter. He is a Twin Peaks super expert, super fan. And he said that he was glad that the Gifted
and the Damned
podcast was the first podcast he heard post-premiere. And he said,
how cool is that?
He said, though, he is never impatient with Langwood Lynch. I've seen so much of his work so many times that I automatically fall into a slower rhythm, and he finds Lynch's pace comforting. So,
great.
Let me say, I hope everybody's like Jubel.
Sure.
I am mentioning it just because I feel like the Langwood Lynch hits me, and it still hits me a bit in parts 3 and 4.
Right. Here's where I would like to make a small request of our Double Ls.
Double Ls?
Our loyal listeners.
Oh, your Double L means the same as mine, huh?
Well, not unless I'm talking about Double L.
Who?
Langwood Lynch.
Oh, okay.
So what I will say is just part of what we're doing is we're staring at the screen pretty intently in the hopes of providing a little bit of insight and entertainment to our Double Ls.
Double Ls?
Loyal listeners.
Okay.
So because of that, sometimes we're not just leaning back in the chair and letting it wash over us. And so sometimes things like Double L, Langwood Lynch, will pop out a little more. So please bear with us a little bit. But we are very, very excited. And overall, I would say through these first 4 episodes, I'm glad they're doing it. And I'm super excited about episode 5. And I'm frankly a little annoyed that we're going to have to wait 2 weeks to see new stuff. But this is what you get. You know, we made our bed. We got to sleep in it. We watched all 4 episodes. So this is all we get for now.
Heck yeah. I want to say that, once again, we're going to hopefully have a new podcast for you next week, even though here in the United States it's Memorial Day weekend and Showtime isn't giving us yet even more Twin Peaks over this 3-day holiday weekend. But as part of that feedback of show that we may do, I want you Double Ls, Langwood listeners,
son of a damn it,
to go ahead to our Facebook page and tell us the name of your 3 favorite new characters.
Oh, cool.
Your 3 favorite new characters. New characters. That's important.
Okay.
I'm asking this because it's one of my almost critiques of this show. Okay. In that, once again, I gave these next 2 parts 8 out of 10. I'm very high on them. We're going to get to how high I am on them. But a part of me at times always wonders, well, why can't we have both? Sam and Tracy, who were in the Glass Box Lounge, who got killed by the monster.
Right.
What could you really say about their characters? They were kind of...
Sure.
I would say they got in a horror movie trope. But even in a horror movie, you kind of know the characters and it can have empathy with them a bit. I talked about in our Fire Walk With Me podcast about how in the Twin Peaks pilot of season 1, you got to know these characters real quickly and you got to like them real quickly.
Sure.
Where so many of these new characters, I don't think we're getting to know them that quickly. And so I wonder if people could name 3 favorite new characters. I think certainly some might pop up in these 2 parts we're going to talk about today.
Oh, for sure.
But once again, listeners, if you do not agree with us, please don't unsubscribe.
Until you subscribe first.
Right. You can't unsubscribe based on our silliness until you've subscribed. And another thing, listeners, I know you may get sick of us reading our new iTunes reviews right at the top. But we don't have ads. We're doing this for fun. We don't even have a Patreon page. We're really just doing this to kind of talk about things we like and things we love, like Twin Peaks, with double L's like you.
Double L's?
Loyal Lynches.
Aha. And also, it's the only way that Bubba lets me into his house.
That's true. And so we're giving you prizes because you've bothered to sit through our new iTunes reviews. So let's burn through them real quick. From the USA iTunes store, we've got Thermos Gizmo. He gives it 5 stars, the perfect fix. I got into Twin Peaks about a year ago, and as soon as I finished season 2, I knew I couldn't get enough. Having a few months to wait for the new season, I started searching for podcasts to tide me over. I tried about 4, mainly from Google searches, before I landed on this one and planning on staying here. Thank you so much. Since I don't have any friends who are obsessed about or even interested in the show to vent with, I'm counting on podcast coverage of Season 3, so these guys will hopefully deliver. As the season progresses, I'm excited to have found something I can indulge in Lynch's world with. Thank you so much, Thermos Gizmo.
Oh, thanks, Thermos. Still from the USA. Great podcast, 5 stars by X3 Twilight. I really like listening to this podcast at work. Easy to listen to and engaging, funny host. As a relative newcomer to Twin Peaks and as someone who loves to tear apart and analyze the shows I love, I enjoy their opinions and rants a lot. Awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Heck yeah. Ray Gone, who we just were talking about, who says, they're a new double L, 5 stars. This is my favorite new to me podcast. Smart hosting, sharp commentary, and total commitment to the world of Twin Peaks. The interviews with characters are super niffy, and the whole show is hilarious. A cup of joe for the soul.
Oh, that's very, very cool. All right. Get this in your ear holes. 5 stars by Neftones. If I was going to recommend a Twin Peaks podcast to anyone, it would be this one. And I do my own. Hey, wait a minute.
Oh, thank you.
It's called I'm Worried About Coop. Hashtag plug.
All right.
Bubba and Mork bring the perfect mix of casual screwing around and longtime fan perspective and knowledge. If you're looking for more than a recap podcast, look no further. Seriously, stop looking. Just listen to this one, okay? Thanks, Neftones. Awesome.
Excellent. And our final new iTunes review this week, it says, Your Cat Knows is the person who wrote it, who gave us 5 stars. After subscribing to several Twin Peaks podcasts earlier this year, acknowledging that all of them have something valuable to share, I began eliminating due to some amount of time it was taking to appreciate them all. And I was on the fence. This person was on the fence about Twin Peaks Gifted and Damn at first. They don't care about the merchandise giveaways. Well, Your Cat Knows you're eligible now. And I found the broad tone a little jarring. Initially, I objected to the gimmickiness of reviewing 60 seconds at a time, but the Black White Lodge moments have become my favorite feature. The hosts are technically astute and genuinely funny. Along with their style of banter, they are serious about Twin Peaks. Heck yeah.
Wow.
All right. We are serious.
Yes, I will also put the rubber chicken away.
All right, so the way we're going to break down parts 3 and 4 is we're going to have to talk about the beginning of part 3 because it ties into so many places. The beginning of part 3 not only takes us to new spaces and what you would call new space in the land of the Black Lodge,
right,
but it also ties so much into South Dakota and into, we find out, in Vegas. So we're going to break that down. Then after that, we'll divide them up into Las Vegas, South Dakota, Twin Peaks. And South Dakota will obviously be tied to Philadelphia for a bit. So let's talk about, is it the opening 20 minutes of the episode 3, Mork? Talk about this, what was it, non-existent space that Cooper found himself in. Just generally, did you enjoy it? Did you find it intriguing? What did you think?
I did enjoy it, and we had been talking sort of throughout about our hopes and dreams and fears, and so in terms of pure heroin Lynch, this certainly qualifies.
Right.
It's not Inland Empire when Catfish was here, and I don't know if Catfish has seen episode 3, but if you like to Eraserhead, I'd like to think that he'd really enjoy the beginning section of episode 3. I thought it was great. I thought there was some really interesting things in there that made me think about previous and sort of future events that we'll see in the episode. I really enjoyed it, and I don't know if I want to see much more of it, but it was fun to see Lynch play in that particular, visual sandbox again. That was cool.
I guess I'm very similar to you on that regard, in that it was fun to be there, but of the two parts, I did like part 4 more, and part 4 spent the least amount of time in what you would call Black Lodge Dreamland.
Right.
And so I would say it was good. I almost wonder if it was too much, but so many little moments of it I loved that this will be something that people will be analyzing for the rest of our lives, looking at this and what it's trying to convey.
Yeah. Were you expecting any sandworms to show up at a certain point? There was
I didn't know you loved Dune as much as you do. I love the novel Dune. I was not a fan of Lynch's version of it.
I saw that to digress for just a second. I saw that at a very impressionable age, and just the experience of it. I mean, they handed out the glossary and all that. I saw it on this huge screen at the Cooper Theater outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Yeah, it was fantastic. Made a huge impact. But I thought I was going to see some sandworms. I really did.
Well, Good Coop, I guess we'll call him, falls onto this balcony, and he's looking out over this waves. You want to think an ocean. My mind thinks, is this the river Styx?
Yeah.
Because there wasn't in this one location on the balcony looking at the water, there weren't stars in the sky. It wasn't a sky above the rippling waves or whatever. Right. It was just what it was. He comes into the room where we see the woman with no eyes. Of course, Mr. C has been shooting out people's eyes.
Yes.
And so we come in here, and here's this woman, like her eyes are sewn shut. Or
she didn't have either. Yeah, she sort of didn't have any eyelids, it looks like, or they were both sewn shut, excuse me. And I thought the stop motion was really cool, where we were sort of jumping frames and stuff like that. I can say it about 15 different ways. I really enjoyed a lot of how he shot this. And that was just, that's just one example.
Now, one thing I thought, I don't know if anybody else thought this, we know something is trying to break into this room.
Yeah.
And we see the door, theoretically, it's trying to break through. And the door has two holes, like it has two eye holes itself.
Right.
Like the door has eyes where she doesn't, and it's trying to break in. We see this electrical device on the wall, and parts of it has two prongs, like an old electrical outlet in your house would have two prongs, and it has the number 15 on it.
Yeah.
Why is that so important? Because later, after the switch is flipped, that number switches to 3.
Yeah.
315, as we know, is
Great Northern Hotel Room for Mr. Dale Cooper, which he pulls it out of his pocket, and we see that room key. One thing that I'm curious about is to what hasn't happened yet, and we don't see it at this point. We haven't seen it at all through the first 4 episodes. And I thought maybe because of Cooper speaking to Leland about, finding Laura.
Right.
I thought maybe that would jar, because Cooper in the real world, or, whatever we want to call it, Cooper he's getting his sea legs. Mr. Jackpots is just coming back to life, and that's understandable. But when he's there, he's totally rational. He's completely lucid. He can speak. You would assume he's got full recall, and he hasn't mentioned Annie at all. He hasn't asked, where's Annie? What's happened to Annie?
That is a great point.
Is he looking for Annie? Does he remember Annie? Does Annie even exist anymore? I don't know.
No.
But I was starting to think about Annie here in this weird tin horn watchtower giant shoe.
No, I want to know from our double L's.
Double L's.
In this case, I do mean loyal listeners. Are you guys frustrated that we haven't, for example, found out anything about Annie? We haven't found out, hey, what's happened after the bank explosion, unless you read Mark Frost's book.
Exactly.
We haven't found out anything about Donna and her parental issues. Or are you just so excited it's back on this dreamland to non-existent that the show has taken us?
Yeah, that will take what we can get. So
the woman with no eyes takes Cooper up a ladder, and they're up in space, it feels like.
Right.
The woman pulls a switch, pulls a lever, and like when she does this, electricity seems to fall, jolt her and shock her.
Yeah.
Some people say this, her pulling the lever is a bit like Mr. Jackpots later.
Exactly.
Pulling on his slot machines. But she falls off into space through stars. She is about to be doing the thing that Laura Palmer and Donna were talking about in Fire Walk with Me when they were like, if you thought you were falling through space, well, what do you think would happen to you? And Laura said, well, I think you'll burst into flames.
Right.
This poor woman with no eyes, she looks like she's on that train.
Yeah, that's a great point. I wasn't even thinking about that. Although we do have, and this is later on, I don't want to jump ahead too far, but there are some other references to Fire Walk with Me that are going to come in pretty handy, I hope. And I think, but more than that, I hope.
What did you think of Major Briggs's head floating through space saying Blue Rose? Were you happy that they found a way to get Don Davis into it? Because I sure was.
Yes, 100%. And that's exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the Blue Rose. Where Fire Walk with Me, where Chet Hundley, not newsman Chet Hundley, Chris Isaac.
Chester Desmond.
Desmond, thank you. Refuses to tell Sam Stanley about what is the Blue Rose. He's not going to tell him that. Everyone else, Gordon Cole knows about it. Here we are.
We found out Albert knows about it.
Albert knows about it, of course. There's nothing Albert doesn't know. And Major Briggs is talking about it. And Major Briggs, who we now know we've known for a while he's dead. We also know that he's the last person, supposedly, and I don't want to jump ahead too much and kick me in the shin if I do. But what we learn subsequently when we see good old Bobby is that Cooper was the last person, and we assume it was Mr. C, evil doppelganger Cooper, was the last person to see Major Briggs alive. Is Major Briggs trapped in the same space? Is he in a different part of the Black Lodge? Was he shunted into non-existence by the T-Mobile electricity tree, sponsored by T-Mobile? We don't know.
Well, here, can I throw out another question at you?
Sure, hit me.
So here, in the vastness of space and time, we see Major Briggs' head floating through, just his head. Mm-hmm. And we know there's a human body found in Ruth Davenport's apartment, which was a male body that was kind of bigger without a head.
Yeah.
Is there any way that body is Major Briggs' body somehow?
From 25 years later? I mean,
I'm just throwing it out there. Is there any chance?
Sure. I mean, there could be.
Well, because jumping ahead, the body, they can't identify the body because the military's blocking them from finding out.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's a great call. That is a great call.
Well, you know why these are all great calls?
No.
It's because we haven't been proven wrong yet.
That's true.
These are the greatest calls ever.
Yeah, that's another great call.
Did you like?
I didn't notice any weird stuff hanging out of Major Briggs's neck as he was floating by. So I don't know if that helps or not. So I don't know if he was decapitated.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Just me. They've taken me into non-existent, and I'm throwing out stuff too.
Yeah, for sure.
How long did it take you to recognize when Cooper comes back down the ladder that the new woman here in the fireplace room near the electrical thing on the wall,
which now has a different number,
was played by Ronette Polaski's actress? That was Phoebe Augustine.
Amazing.
Hope I'm pronouncing that right. The woman, Ronette Polaski, is there in this space. To me, if you look at the eyes, it's really, really similar. Like she's aged like anybody would, except me, over the last 26 years.
Yeah.
In the eyes, it really looks like her. And this gave me a point to say that when we did our Fire Walk With Me podcast, I never got a chance to say this, and I always meant to. I feel bad. I thought Phoebe Augustine's performance in Fire Walk With Me was actually really, really good. She's not in it much, and she was never in the show much, so you may think, well, is this person even able to act? And I thought her scenes in the pink room up in Canada where she and Laura and Donna were getting high with Jacques and stuff, and then later her stuff in the train car, I thought Phoebe Augustine was a great actor in Fire Walk With Me, and it was good to see her here.
Yeah, no, she did a good job, and I didn't catch that, and look, this is amazing. Everyone's learning. I'm learning.
Now, she said her mother's coming. So, theoretically, once again, let's assume that monster that's on the other side of the door is her mother. Now, some people have said that the figure in the glass box, the kind of shapeless figure, when it appeared, it looked a bit more female in perspective.
Right.
So, is her mother that monster which somehow is following Cooper, chasing Cooper?
I suppose.
Or is her mother Laura? Because we got to find Laura. Oh, so many questions we have to think about.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that fits into the plot check. But yeah, I mean, they haven't really connected to the larger narrative. Has not really clicked just yet. So a lot of potential.
Did you like?
But I don't know if that's it.
Did you like Good Cooper going through this, what I call electric wall outlet?
I loved it. And
losing his shoes. New shoes.
Yeah. Losing shoes. It's happened to the best of us. And right before that, we do get to see our new good buddy, and I'm going to say that he counts as a new character, Mr. C.
Ooh, see, that's an interesting point. Is Mr. C, double L's, you tell us, is Mr. C a new character? Because when I was asking you to name those 3 favorite new characters, I wanted to see if people would have to grab on to people like Mr. C because we don't know so many of the new characters really haven't popped in a way you would love them and care about them.
Yeah. And we probably did see Mr. C at the very end of season 2. So
yeah, that's why I'm being a bit of a stickler. So Mr. C,
right?
He's having a hard time while driving.
He's not feeling well.
He needs to be taking Lyft.
He's not doing well.
No, and it feels like, call me crazy, that we've heard of electricity, and that even back 25 years ago we speculated that was how some of these spirits are able to travel.
Sure.
And he can tell he's like getting sucked into his car's cigarette lighter.
Right. And that brings up
And what is a cigarette lighter, Mork, but electric fire?
Oh,
electric fire, walk with me and light my cools.
Yeah, it works. That's the title in Korea. Korean double L's, please verify.
Okay.
No. So my question about that is, I'm going to go out on a limb here a little bit. I'm going to go out on a electric T-Mobile tree limb, and say that Mr. C, he seems to be very cognizant and very comfortable operating the levers of getting into and out of the Black Lodge, how to avoid it. And so electricity in and of itself isn't going to be a danger, because then he would probably pull a Chuck from Better Call Saul and, and completely
off the grid.
He'd be completely off the grid if he didn't want to get yanked back anywhere.
And he seemingly can get yanked back anywhere. Way back when, we thought probably, you had to go to Glastonbury Grove. You had to go to certain spaces to access this or enter the dream world. Mr. C, because he is so much tied to the dream world, he could be driving down a car in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota. Apologies to our South Dakota listeners.
Right.
And he can start getting pulled back.
Well, but it seems like it's connected to someone else pulling him on the other side. And so either Ronette Polaski's mother, who's banging on the door, or Coop is somehow, crossing the streams and kind of forcing the door to open a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And this brings to mind, so these coordinates, it's probably, I would say it's also safe to assume that Mr. C knows the coordinates of Glastonbury Grove.
Oh, yeah.
He knows where that is. So where do we think these new coordinates are? And if we're talking about hopping through different dimensions and different time periods, all this crazy stuff, what the hell does it matter in terms of physical coordinates? So there's only one place to get to a different part of this dimension and through Earth?
Well, let me go even a bit nuttier than that.
Okay.
So Mr. C is getting these coordinates from Bill's
Hastings'
secretary.
Right.
So just because I'm going to go out on the evolved arms limb, a tree branch like you were, she might not know that, but might she know where Mr. Hastings' Garmin-Bosia is? Where his pain and sorrow is because he's killed somebody and he's cheated on his wife? That is probably wrong as well, but it's the only thing I could think, well, what would this guy's secretary possibly know? Why did I go to Garmin-Bosia? Because Mr. C loses a bunch right now the real hard way, and we got some...
I like to call that double G.
Double G.
Gurgitated Garmin-Bosia.
Oh, no. That's the worst kind.
And so seeing this in his car, and look, we've all been there. Let's be honest. We went to college. We've been there.
Oh, man.
But when we saw Mr. C in the diner earlier, and we were, I remember asking, was he eating some cream corn? I don't know. It was yellow. It was in a dish. Maybe, maybe not. But whether he was eating it then doesn't matter. It was coming out now. And I thought he was dead.
Oh, wow. That'd be a bad way to go.
Yeah, I thought he was dead because when we meet another new friend...
Good old Dougie Jones is having his tryst with Jade. And I have to be honest, when I saw the name Jade, this actress tweeted out, I'll be as Jade in Twin Peaks. Jade is the name of a character on Invitation to Love, and I thought, are they resurrecting Invitation to Love?
Okay, well, maybe that's intentional, or maybe they've found themselves in a bit of a soap opera.
And so Dougie Jones, his arm has gone numb. People in Twin Peaks, in that infamous episode Path to the Black Lodge, their arms start shaking and go slightly numb.
And
Teresa Banks, her arm went numb, and what is one common between Dougie and Teresa Banks?
I mean, are we talking jewelry?
Right.
Yeah. That was a bit of a part of my brain. Definitely popped a little bit there. Also, I just want to recommend the lovely actress who played Jade. Just, I got to say, shout out to the costume designer.
Oh, come on.
No,
she's very lovely.
She's lovely. I was thinking when it was before they actually say his last name, I was thinking, is this Dougie? Is this Dougie Milford?
Oh, wow. That's a good one.
Because it's Coop. I mean, so what exactly are we looking at here? And I guess the other... So physically, he obviously... So Cooper and Dougie resemble each other because, as we, learn subsequently, his entire family, and his old friends who, are eating hot dogs in the casino, they all recognize him as Dougie. So I thought for a moment, before any of that was verified, and I don't know if anybody else out there had the same thought, but I thought for a moment that maybe possibly Coop had, just like we saw Bob inhabiting Leland via the mirror, I thought maybe good Coop was somehow inhabiting people on the other side as well. Like he hadn't made it all the way across, or some of him got left over. So I thought that might be a possibility for a minute, and then it's verified that, no, this is just what the guy looks like. So he got the ring, though, from the nurse in Firewalk with Me. Then
in the Firewalk with Me missing pieces. That didn't even make the film when the nurse took it off him.
So how did we get that? And now we have back at the pedestal, we're going to have not just the ring, but also a little gold bead, it looks like.
Infuse the machine with gold.
So how did good old Dougie get that ring? And I'll be honest, Mr. C is up to a lot more no good than what Dougie's up to.
That's for sure.
Dougie is, on the one hand, yes, Dougie ruined Sam Jr.'s, or what was his name? Sunshine? I don't know.
You mean Sonny Jim?
Sonny Jim's birthday. But he also brings back, $700,000 for wearing the ring. In terms of what we've learned throughout Firewalk with Me, Coop is saying, Laura, don't put on the ring. In the book Secret History of Twin Peaks, written by Mark Frost, which we explore, bad things come to people who wear the ring, and also evil powers are granted. So I'm not seeing the negative impact of this guy having, wearing the ring. And maybe he only wore the ring for a little while, and his arm went numb right away, and then he took it off.
Jumping just ahead ever so slightly, when Mike in the Red Room is talking to Dougie Jones, and he says, someone manufactured you for a purpose, but I think now that's been fulfilled. Then Dougie shrinks, explodes, and that's when this gold ball, which shrinks down to the size of the pearl, is left.
Right.
Who would have manufactured him but Mr. C, because he knew Good Cooper's going to come out. I don't want Good Cooper to come in and inhabit this body I'm using, so I'll manufacture Dougie Jones. So Good Coop has a place to go. That's the way I'm interpreting it, but there's no right interpretation here at all.
Right, or wrong, thank God. That's a tricky one. Look, it's certainly possible, and this is part of why I had some trouble with these episodes, is that there seems to be a lot of, we keep expanding what's possible, and some of the rules of the universe just aren't as clear, and we're still not at a point it's impossible to not compare these episodes to the first
30. Yeah.
Thank you. But it's impossible not compare them. But remember, in the beginning episodes of season 1, we did have a murder mystery to solve, and everything was sort of hanging off of that tree. The only tree we have in these episodes are electric and on fire and have a giant piece of flesh on top of it. So we're not quite sure where we're going. And we're all in because ultimately we want to see what happens to Coop and all that. But it does make it a little bit more challenging, and it is a little bit of a concern from a stakes perspective, because some of the things that we've seen at this point are so out there and so, let's just be polite and call it improbable, that maybe does it make us feel less nervous about if, for example, if Cooper's walking down the street and gets hit by a semi-truck, do we really believe he's dead?
Good call.
All of those things, are I'm a little nervous about. I'm on board, but a lot of these things, a lot of these possibilities are raising questions that I'm not sure if we'll ever answer.
All right. Well, I felt better about these 2 hours than the previous hours, because I felt like I did have things to sink my teeth in and hold on to. But what you're talking about, Mork, is something that Entertainment Weekly writer Jeff Jensen wrote in his review of the first 2 hours. And I want to read those because I feel it's expressing what you're expressing after these 2 hours, and I kind of felt after the first 2 hours. Jeff Jensen wrote, I have to admit that the absence of certain conventions that even that unconventional Twin Peaks pilot way back then possessed, a.k.a. particularly a sympathetic point of view character, one who actually exists as a flesh and blood person, not a ghost or a concept, frustrated my investment and makes me worried about the new series moving forward. The windowed scenes, the jumping around, the slow stirring of contextual information created narrative flow that was mostly dreamy, but an impersonal, fragmented dream. The sound design gave the greater whole a personality of menace and mystery that pulled us through. The minimal Angelo Badalamenti score, a key weapon on Lynch's want to mystify us and make us feel things, was striking, but it may have been strategic. It missed his emotional hook. And so that's what he's saying. Mm-hmm. I would say I agree with a lot of those, but because I was so charmed by whatever we want to call Mr. Jackpot's Dougie Jones, I was able to just go with this ride. Kind of, all right, let's follow this through. And so I many of those things you just expressed, I kind of have trouble with too. And to be honest, I once again wonder why we can't have both. Why we can't have a scene showing us, hey, here's Ben Horne and Jerry, and this is what they're doing now. Mm-hmm. But then also give us just some little story hook, some little want. Mm-hmm. You know, I go back to the pilot in that, yes, we had the murder mystery frame, but if there had been no murder mystery and I suddenly met Ben Horne, as soon as I meet him, I understand, okay, well, this guy wants to sell this thing to the Norwegians. Yeah. He wants to sell this to the Norwegians, so I have that hook of his want. This, we have Ben and Jerry, but I don't know any of their wants. I don't know their goals, and so I don't think they have a story. It's more like, well, this is what's happening.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we do yet. I think that when we're catching up with people who we used to know very well, I'm a lot more forgiving.
Yeah, but I want both. I want to catch up and give me some little hook into what their wants and desires are now.
Right.
Why can't we have both? I think people would like hey, this is what we're doing now.
Sure.
But I think they would still like, even if it was like, all right, Jerry, you got to, make sure your thing's above board and legal.
Right.
Because there are these manufactured Chinese drugs coming down from Canada or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, look, we'll get there. I'm not as concerned yet about that stuff. I hear what you're saying, but I'm okay with seeing those guys and just sort of catching up and, this is who they are now. And we can kind of briefly, they're sort of establishing shots, but just for these characters that we know and may or may not love, but definitely are glad to see again.
Okay.
One thing in terms of that fella Jeff's from Entertainment Weekly's comments, in terms of the sound design, the credited sound designer is David Lynch.
Oh, yeah.
On these episodes. I enjoyed Mr. Jackpots and I enjoyed Hel-Lo-oo. I love that, and it was fun. It was fun seeing that, but it did go on a bit.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't have a problem with it in this case.
Yeah, it did go on a bit, and some of the just the visual gags. I mean,
well, hold on. Let's follow Dougie.
I thought you said there were no rules.
No. Okay. Let's now follow Dougie / Mr. Jackpot on his adventure.
Okay.
So one thing that happens is Dougie, he comes to, he's thrown up his Garmonbozia, we believe.
Yeah.
And then the next thing we know is Jade is trying to get him out. They've been having their tryst in a model home of Rancho Rosa.
At Rancho Rosa Partnership, who are bringing us the show.
And yet Dougie, they're two hitmen, Gene and Jake. Dougie apparently, as we find out later, owes a lot of money. Two hitmen, Gene and Jake, are looking to kill him. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Gene, later, he doesn't realize that Dougie left with Jade.
But he's in the car, yeah.
But he plants a tracking device on Dougie's car.
Right. So he's getting ready.
Across the street, some little boy is kind of watching all this go down while his mother,
his junkie mom,
is taking alcohol and pills and screaming 119.
Right. Not 315, 119.
Or 911. She's singing 119.
That could be true. That poor kid. Man.
And so once again, I think we may go back in time, because if we don't learn more about this kid and his mom across the street, is this just kind of some commentary about people get addicted to opioids and don't take care of their kids, and it's just a flavor? I don't know. Dougie drops his Twin Peaks key at a speed bump. He goes down to pick it up.
Yeah.
Hitman doesn't see him.
He's out of the crosshairs.
Dougie lives. Dougie lives.
Dougie Love lives. He was pretty great. So
they go to the Silver Mustang Casino. Dougie is like a newborn walking into the world. Some people have described him. He's like when an alien comes down to Earth and he has to learn everything.
Sure.
Why does Good Cooper almost have no memories whatsoever that you could think of, or they have to kind of be brought out of him?
Yeah, I think that it's a little mystifying, but I do understand it, and it's one of those things where still at the end of episode 4, Mr. Jackpots is not back to being Cooper, and we don't know what it's going to take. I mean, the fact is,
if coffee didn't bring him back, what is it going to have to take?
Right, and he didn't seem to really like the coffee, or it was just
he had
hot.
A big smile after he spit it out. Yeah.
He did. But I wasn't, when he had that coffee, it looked so dark and thick that I wasn't sure if it was the burnt motor oil from Glastonbury Grove.
Right. Enjoy this,
and maybe that's what he was thinking of. But
well, Dougie there at the Silver Mustang Casino.
Yeah. So we jumped ahead to the breakfast party.
He sees this guy win, and after the guy wins, the guy says, "Hello."
Right.
Dougie says it immediately after pulling the arm, before he's won. It's almost like that. Hello.
Yeah.
Is what signals money to make it rain.
Right.
And once again, I call it whimsy. This mean, cruel woman who shoots the bird at Dougie a couple times. She shoots the bird at the security camera. Mm-hmm. And this is one of these people that Lynch loves to paint. This woman who is obviously on hard time. Her clothes are dirty. Her clothes are rough. But she kind of became one of my favorite new characters. Right. Once she started winning, and she's like, which way, Mr. Jackpot? Which machine?
Something tells me she may have spent a little time in the back of a Mercury Cougar with Carl Rod at some point.
She's listed in the credits as Lady Slot Addict.
Love it.
That is a wonderful title. Lady Slot Addict.
The third.
Let Mr. Jackpots help you.
Yeah. So here, let me ask you this. So we're seeing what's drawing Mr. Jackpots to all these jackpots, and this is by far the most lucrative casino in the history of the world. This is probably what got Bugsy Siegel killed. But above each of these things, we see like a little glimmer of the Black Lodge
and fire. Yeah,
and fire. And so traditionally, those are not good luck symbols.
No, they aren't.
And so that is...
And traditionally, Cooper would just kind of go do things. These FBI agents, remember in Fire Walk With Me, both Chet, Desmond, and Cooper, when they're in the trailer park, they start walking in a different way. Yeah. And Carl Rod's like, where are you going? And they're like, intuition brings me over here.
Right.
This isn't Dougie's intuition. This is an actual physical thing he sees that says, okay, this is the machine that's going to get me rich, baby.
Well, he's not even, he's just going there.
Yeah, he doesn't even care if he wins.
He doesn't care if he doesn't care if he wins or loses. He doesn't even know that he's been winning. They chase him around. When I was driving out here, when I moved to California from the Midwest, and I drove out, I had my life savings with me. And as it happened, some friends of mine it was Labor Day weekend, so the beginning weekend of the NFL season, and some friends from back home were going to be in Las Vegas. And so they said,
this is dangerous.
Why don't you crash?
Mork, this is dangerous.
I was terrified. Why don't you crash with us? Why don't you stay with us? You can stay at our hotel and we'll hang out and we'll have a good time. And that'll be our sort of going away party for you. Perfect. So I get there, I meet these guys. They're all doing great in terms of gambling. And I'm like, I literally had my life savings. This is a long time ago. I had it in cash. I don't know why. Driving across the country in cash. Long story. Who cares? I took $20. I put all the money in the hotel safe. I took $20 and I went to a slot machine. Well, these guys are playing craps and blackjack and big hands. And I'm going to play $20 and that'll be done, and that'll be that. So I hit the button a couple of times, and all of a sudden, the machine starts making this weird noise, and lights are going off. I have no idea what's going on. I thought I broke it, just like Mr. Jackpots. And someone's like, "Oh, hey, you won!" And I had because quarters weren't coming out. Nothing was coming out. I had no clue. I almost walked away. I thought, "Oh, geez, I'm going to get in trouble."
Saying you're as smart as Mr. Jackpots, that's kind of tough there.
At that moment, sure.
How much did you win?
I won about $650.
And the lights went off for $650. Let's do this, Mr. Jackpots.
Hell yeah,
Mr. Mork Pots.
What happened? I'm sure our double O's are going to really need to know this, but on the way between the Midwest in Colorado, the water pump in my car broke.
No.
So that paid for the damage to my car. So I'll take it. Anyway, that's my Mr. Jackpot story. I also have a slot lady addict story as well.
They'll have to sign up for our Patreon account to hear that.
Yes, please do.
One thing we find out about Dougie Jones from his good buddy Bill Shaker is that Dougie Jones lives on Lancelot Court near Merlin's Market.
Yes.
Those things make me think Glastonbury.
Sure. Also, one thing that, just to back up for a second, when we first meet Dougie, when they're making their escape from this whatever you call it, a sample house, a model home, whatever you call it, in the development, Mr. Jackpots notices, Sycamore Street.
Yes, he's getting lots of signals, which you would hope would wake up the good Cooper in there somewhere.
Yeah, so there's some interesting stuff going on. So basically, he's back in, he sees the drapes, he's doing great, he breaks Vegas.
Love it.
And
he breaks the Silver Mustang
He breaks
casino.
the Silver Mustang, and they do we want to follow him a little bit more?
Yeah, let's follow him all the way through.
Okay.
So the next thing you see is that the casino, they give him a limo ride home, which is probably true. Somebody wins that much money. Yep. But one thing I thought was interesting is the casino boss says, I'd like you to come back here and try that luck again.
Right.
I think if you're the casino boss, you're like, hey, buddy, Yes, leave. Nice knowing you. Don't come back here, Mr. Jackpot. So Dougie goes home via the limo, and once he gets out of the limo, an owl flies overhead. The owls are not what they seem.
Right.
So is this world we're seeing, is this home here on Lancelot Court?
With a red door.
Is it what it seems? Because nobody seems to really feel bad that Dougie seems like he's had a stroke. Doug, you know, Jade points it out. Nobody's like, let's get Dougie to the hospital. He is not acting normal in any way.
Yeah, no one seems to be having too much trouble with this, particularly his lovely bride,
Janie.
Yeah, played by movie star
Naomi Watts.
Yeah, amazing.
But once she sees the cash, she's like, well, this is going to get us out of these money troubles.
Right.
We are meant to assume, I believe, that the money troubles are why these hitmen are after him.
Sure.
One person who loves his dad's quirks is good old Sonny Jim Jones.
Yeah.
He gives his dad the thumbs up, which should be a real interesting sign, once again, to wake up Coop. The big thing that struck me is I know a lot of people were upset having to watch people vomit. People don't like watching that. I heard from Double L's, boy, I don't like watching people vomit. I don't know how well our Double L's like people watching urinating for the first time in 26 years.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I know that feeling, though.
No, bro. Skip ahead. All right. Dougie, one thing that we haven't yet talked about is a possible sign of Dougie looking in the mirror. Dougie relieves himself after 27 years, and then he goes to the bathroom mirror and he starts looking in it. And all you can think is, okay, please do not see Bob. Do not see Bob. He's looking in the mirror, and I got tense for that moment.
Yeah.
He didn't see him. I think that's a good sign. I'm not sure. That doesn't mean we're not going to see Bob somehow attached to sweet, innocent, possibly an open victim, Dougie. But at that moment, we didn't, and I was glad.
Yeah. No, I was too.
The next morning, he has a vision of Mike in the Black Lodge.
Well, Mike is talking to him.
Yeah, he says, you were tricked, and that now you or Mr. C were led to believe one of you guys has to die because both of you can't exist in the world at the same time.
Right. So, well, that brings an interesting question, or what? Because they are both alive, as we learn. I thought at this point that Mr. C was dead in the car.
Oh,
because,
okay, good.
You know, when the
officers
South Dakota,
come up, the patrolmen
the smell,
come up to him.
And then we learn later, one of them had to be treated by the hazmat people. It was, so I assumed at that point that he was dead. So it's like, oh, okay, well, the problem solved. But then, I was still wondering about, well, are we going to see, the real Dougie? I wasn't sure about that. But yeah, that is, he does get tricked, but they broke the rules, basically, is what Mike is saying. Right?
Mr. C did, yeah.
Well,
because Mr. C was supposed to go back, he didn't.
Okay, but Mike is telling Coop that, you were tricked. Only one of you can be there at a time, so one of you cannot stay there.
Right.
So is someone chasing them? Are they both going to get brought back?
That third party that they thought was a phone call from Philip Jeffries? This is a good question. Double L, loyal listeners, put on our Facebook page and let us know.
Yeah.
And then let's just go to the breakfast scene you were talking about earlier.
Okay.
There was a great Easter egg in that the Jones family has an owl cookie jar in the background. How sweet. The cookies
sweet.
are not what they seem.
The cookies.
They could be Jerry Horn's cookies.
It could be
Who knows what's baked in them?
They could be Jerry Horn's. They could be made with carobs instead of chocolate chips. Anything can happen in this universe.
Once again, this whimsy I enjoy. A part of your brain, at least a part of my brain, has to turn off. Okay, Dougie just wraps a tie around his head.
Right.
But because good old Sonny Jim Jones was enjoying it, seemingly, and having fun with it, I was having fun with it.
Yeah.
I do miss the score. The old Twin Peaks show used to have these scores which would kind of underscore the whimsy and kind of really set the mood.
Yeah.
And this feels so dry so many times that there is no score, and I do miss that, but I enjoyed it a lot.
I would go a little further, more than just the score. I mean, what this reminded me of was it reminded me of Breakfast at the Great Northern. And of course, the first time that Coop's having breakfast at the Great Northern, we have a piece of the score that we haven't really heard yet in terms of sort of the jazzy vibes that usually introduced Audrey. And so to go from that, having breakfast there, never has there been more sexual tension involving grapefruits than in those early episodes. And now
we're in the Joneses' house.
We're in the Joneses' house. There's a kid. It's lit very, very brightly. True. We don't have the music. Naomi Watts, who's a beautiful lady, does not seem to be particular. There doesn't seem to be much of an attraction or much warmth between them. And granted, he's disappeared for a few days.
Right.
And,
he missed the kid's birthday.
But yeah, so it's a far cry from the last time we saw, Coop having breakfast for the first time someplace. But yeah,
and there was no bacon. We needed the maple syrup to hit the bacon to really call back to that scene you're talking about in the Great Northern.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. But there is something about... But what I would say is with the kid responding so positively and he's giggling, he's having a good time, and that in terms of the earnestness of Coop, and it's almost like, if there's a dog, who's friendly to someone, it's like, oh, it's a good guy. The same with kids. So... Okay, Coop is back. This is Coop. He can't speak.
Sentences.
Presumably, he is not the same investigator that he used to be. But he's still got a good soul. So we're good on that front. So that's one box that we've ticked, but many more to go.
Do you want to circle back to his Garmin Bozia buddy, Mr. C, and follow him through?
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty short ride. These couple episodes. Yeah,
Mr. C, he gets his body found by the cops.
Yeah.
In that terrible, hideous smell. They call it poison.
Right. Yeah. It made one of them sick, and just like I said a second ago, the hazmat team had to get called back. I thought he was dead. That
leads us, though, to Philadelphia. Albert, Gordon were introduced to Tamra Preston here on the show called Tammy. Tammy has been investigating what we call the glass box murders, and she points out again that the guards are missing. Will we go back in time and see where they went, what happened to them? And while she's talking to them, they get a call about Cooper being found.
Yes.
And of course, I think to myself, there's no such thing as coincidence. How did they say it on the show? When two events occur, we have to pay close attention. And so Tammy, even though she's obviously much younger than these two crusty old guys, Albert and Gordon,
right,
she follows them into Gordon's office, where Gordon's office has a picture of a nuclear bomb going off behind his desk. What lovely office art. And some people say that there's a photo of Jack Parsons on the wall opposite that. And turns out they've got to go to South Dakota to find out about Coop.
They got to find out about Coop. They found him. They're going to go check it out right away. Before they hit the road, do we want to talk about who Gordon spent a little time with?
He had to check in with the boss. Before you leave town, you do have to talk to the boss.
You always do.
And that is wonderful Denise.
Wonderful Denise, played by the wonderful and lovely David Duchovny, who Denise has aged interestingly.
What do you mean by that?
Well...
And let me say, as you describe this, know that I don't want to do too much editing, for the love of God. Denise got a promotion. Apparently, we found out that she was in the DEA undercover. She wasn't a DEA agent.
Right.
And now we find out she was there undercover for Gordon. And now she has taken the steps all the way to be up in charge.
Yes, and they call her the chief of staff of the FBI, not the director, but they called her the chief of staff, which I thought was interesting.
With everything that's currently happening in 2017 with our with our agencies, let's give it to Denise.
Let's give it to Denise.
Did you want to say anything about the scene? Because this really felt like just another check-in. Like, it didn't really advance the story at all. It was just like, hey, let's see how
this felt like
Denise is doing.
Yeah, this felt like fan service.
I like Denise, but why not have her tied in more?
It's nice to see her again. She's in an elevated position.
Well, Denise does bring up an idea which probably hadn't been considered yet. Denise is asking, why is Tammy Preston? Why is she getting involved in this case? And I just have to be honest, even though I really did like episode 4 a lot, I wanted Tammy Preston to do more.
She didn't do anything, which is considering the dossier and all
the fact, she plays such a big part in the secret history of Twin Peaks, and probably she will do more. But really, she just felt almost like an aid to Gordon and Albert.
Yeah, to Gordon and Albert.
And I want her to do more. People are talking about her as an actress. To be honest, I can't judge her as an actress. She almost had nothing to do.
Yeah,
she was constantly talked about, but she didn't do much. I want to see her do more.
Yeah, she did very little to drive the action. And the big question it raised for me was, with the dossier is presented to her, almost like when you read Secret History of Twin Peaks, it feels like Gordon is saying to her, I need you to finish this journey. You finish this quest. You have to go do this. And maybe that's going to happen later on in the show. later on in these, we have 14 more hours to see that. But we haven't seen that yet, and maybe they're just introducing her. And maybe some larger, more permanent fate will affect Gordon or will affect Albert, so really forcing her to step up. But we haven't really seen what's so important or what's so special about her specifically yet.
But she accompanies them to your favorite scene. They go to South Dakota, and they have this very odd interaction with Mr. C. Why don't you take it away, since this was your favorite scene in the whole thing? Why don't you describe it? Why don't you say what you loved about it, why you loved it? Let's hear it.
Well, we have Gordon and we have supposedly Coop, but we know it's not Coop, and it's pretty clear that right away Albert and Gordon and not even Agent TP think that it's Coop. And so there's it's a bit of a standoffish conversation. It was a little bizarre, that setting. I haven't really seen anything like that. Maybe they had this bad smelling guy in a bubble. I mean,
no.
But I don't know. I mean, but I've never seen. Normally,
well, it's a maximum security prison. You've seen people talk in a million crime shows. Mm-hmm. People talk with a suspect between glass. This was like between glass in a bunker. This was what it felt like.
This is almost like the glass box,
point
that we saw in New York.
And Mr. C is kind of doing Cooper things, like giving the thumbs up.
He's giving the thumbs up, exactly.
But it's like you're seeing the old things, but they're not right. It's almost like somebody watching this compared to the old show. They're like, this is kind of right. They're doing certain beats like the thumbs up, but it's not right. And so...
Actually, I do want to back up, and I just want to mention how great it was. There was a brief scene where they're going, let's see what we found in Mr. C's car. And it was about 6 pounds of heroin, a machine gun, a dog's leg. I mean, that was pretty great.
That dog's leg was one of the few things that got leaked.
Yeah.
Like, we heard that Cooper got found with a dog sled in his trunk a year ago. Like, people were leaking this. People with pictures of Dougie in his lime green jacket. Yeah. Those have been on the web for a while. So, So what do you want to have any guesses? Do you want to go out on the evolution of the arms limb and tell us what you think this dog is? Was it a dog body part in Bill's car?
Right. I had not ever actually considered.
Well, when the cops see that bit of flesh or whatever it is underneath the cooler in Doug's car, the cop goes, woof.
Yeah, that is true. I don't know what maybe a dog's nose that could have been, but that is so brutal. I just like that it was, okay, clearly one of our guys, there better be a good explanation. But
they can only hold him for 2 days, so having a dog's leg in your car is not a chargeable crime.
Yeah, or 10 pounds of heroin or cocaine.
Yeah, wait a minute, why can they only hold him for 10 days?
Yeah, you would think that would be probable cause of something, but this is South Dakota, so...
They get the government out of my trunk.
That's exactly right. But so I really like that. And so the question is, I mean, these guys have to know immediately because, if you think about it, why wouldn't Coop for 25 years? We're not talking about 6-9 months. We're not talking about, okay, when Coop got suspended for, the drug deal that he was a part of with Denise many years ago in Ernie Niles, well, he went off the reservation for about 2 weeks. So we're talking 25 years, and it's not surprising that they're being a little standoffish with him. But
Mr. C was undercover. Give him a break. He was undercover for a quarter of a century.
It's pretty good. But I mean, what crime? How much evidence does one need to gather for 25 years? That is the question that I would like to
You know what? Come on, give him some credit. I'm building a 25-year case against these people. A 25-year
case with also. Remember that other guy who disappeared? Who's been gone for 26 years, Philip Jeffries? Yeah. Well, guess what? I'm working with him. We got it covered. News. No problem. Do what you got to do. Go with God.
Right. I don't need to see my lawyer. I'll just tell you.
Yeah, this doesn't seem to be... I mean, this probably is Mr. C not playing at the top of his game. And granted, he's probably a little weak. He doesn't have many options. However, I was convinced he was dead. And this guy, the first time we see him, he's knocking people out with one punch. He's doing all sorts of crazy moves. He's a crazy shot. So I was actually a little surprised that not only is he alive, but that he wasn't able to, the two patrolmen who pulled him over, they were made sick. They were made weak by the smell of the Garmonbozia. So how he got there, clearly this has to be part of Mr. C's plan to hang out with Ray, who's been arrested.
Exactly right. Well, let me throw you a question, Mork. Let me throw you a question. When at the end of season 2, the classic show, Cooper looks in the mirror, he sees Bob.
Yeah.
Is Bob still with Mr. C? Because when Bob was in Leland, Bob did a pretty good job of hiding. Bob could blend into society, or allowed Leland to blend into society.
Right.
Mr. C not doing so much. Not only in wardrobe, but in functions.
Right.
He's not really trying to blend in like Leland did. He is totally badass Mr. C.
Yeah, he seems to be enjoying doing exactly what he wants, but he's doing it out on the margins. Everyone we've seen him interact with is probably not paying their fair share of taxes. So there's not as much, Leland was, a pillar of a small town, and so had to behave a certain way.
Well, Cooper was a pillar of the FBI. Couldn't Mr. C have just kept playing Cooper?
Well, that's a great question. And the other part of it, actually, now that you bring it up, was Mr. C as much of a forgive the term, idiot when he came out. I mean, he didn't seem to be.
Right.
He wakes up.
Well, he needed to brush my teeth.
He needed to brush his teeth over and over. He couldn't really work the toothpaste. Okay. But, he seemed to be a lot more on his game than Coop is, thus far. So, but it's only been a day. For Coop outside. So,
do you have anything else to talk about the interrogation scene between Gordon, Albert, and Mr. C? Or do you want to go outside and talk about this blue-tinted world?
Blue-tinted world. They mentioned the blue rose.
Oh, yeah, where Albert says he authorized Philip Jeffries. Now, Philip Jeffries had disappeared, but somehow Albert contacted him and said Albert authorized Philip to give Cooper the name of an informant in Colombia. A week later, the informant was killed.
Right. Yeah, and this is a little odd for me because I've always thought of Albert as a forensics guy. He's not in charge of other people. I mean, he's got the lab and he's going to, bitch and moan about the locals.
He's got his team, right, but he's not in charge, right.
But he's not sending David Bowie anywhere.
No.
For God's sake. So that didn't really track. I'm okay with that, but
good.
I definitely enjoyed all of them being involved. It ends
on a cliffhanger. One person has to look at Coop and Albert. One certain person they want to check in with, and Albert knows where she drinks. Is this how we meet Diane?
That would be amazing. Or Annie.
Oh boy, that would be good too. That would be real good too.
That could be cool. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. And we were sort of joking about it earlier. And this for me is why I'm kind of starting to get a little nervous and downgrade things a little bit, is because there's so many possibilities that I just feel like we got to lock in at a certain point just so we know where we're going. Because if we never know where we're going, then when we get there, I don't think we're going to care as much as we would otherwise. One question that I have, and we're not there yet, because so far Cole is only in South Dakota, but we're presuming that Cole and Albert and Agent TP are going to make their way to Eastern and or Western Washington State and be back in Twin Peaks.
Well, I think one of those three will end up there. I could see it. She hasn't done much yet, but I could see Tammy Preston spinning off and being the one to go, and then Albert and Gordon going back to Philadelphia.
But I'm hoping that Cole's been keeping tabs. You think Cole is Facebook friends with Shelley Johnson? Because I would like to see those two. I'd like to see those two get back.
So why don't we go deeper into this more? Are you saying what you want to see? You want to see Gordon and Albert and even TP. You want to see us get back to everybody to end back in Twin Peaks. Why are you saying it like that?
I'd love to see some of those loops closed. Albert was particularly Albert, much more than Cole. Albert was a huge part of the original mystery and solving the original mystery. He was there when Leland died.
Sure.
And so he's been a big part of this whole journey. And so I'd like to see Albert back there. I think, look, we're talking about, the show is called Twin Peaks. It's the importance of this place. It's pulling everyone towards it. And so I'd like to see some of those characters there. I would say it's most important. We know Tammy's going to get there because the dossier, right?
We assume.
All right, so I'm going to bet that. I'd give you 7 to 6 odds. That she's
Okay,
gonna
keep
show
going. Yes.
Cole is not as necessary, but Albert, I think, is crucial to get back there. So that's what I'd like to see. But maybe they don't make it. Maybe that's
Will
why
you be
Tammy has to go
okay
up.
if these people, if everything doesn't converge in Twin Peaks until part 17, part 18? Are you going to be okay if it's a long journey to get there?
Possibly. I mean, it's really, really hard to say. If we're spinning our wheels and chasing our tail until then no. But if they got important things to do in the meantime.
All right. Well, let's get to Twin Peaks to round up the final bits of story of plots and locations we visit in episodes 3 and 4. Twin Peaks, Hawk's continuing to work. He hangs the Donut Disturb sign outside the conference room.
That is pretty great, pretty official.
While he, Lucy, and Andy search the case files for anything missing.
Yeah,
Lucy,
I think this scene reveals why so many Twin Peaks Twin Peaks convictions were overturned.
Oh, no.
Because Lucy ate the evidence.
That is a pretty big crime. Eating the evidence, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Did you find that especially funny? There were little moments in this where I laughed, but Lucy's kind of long, painful admission, I didn't laugh too much. I like the fact that the chocolate bunnies came back because they got mentioned in the pilot. But
right.
One thing happened too. Sorry to cut you off there.
No.
Is that when we read The Secret History of Twin Peaks, which is the book written by Mark Frost, I talked about how there were times in there where you could tell it was Frost's writing because he was almost plagiarizing stuff he had written in the series.
Yeah.
They're in this scene here about the chocolate bunny, where they're like, is it the chocolate bunny? It's not the chocolate. Wait, is it the chocolate bunnies? Mm-hmm. This, to me, is Lynch a bit with his comedic styles, because it goes straight back to Fire Walk With Me when Laura's like, Bobby, you killed Mike. You killed Mike. Bobby's like, this isn't Mike. Wait, is this Mike?
Right.
It's the exact same bit to me. And I in Fire Walk With Me, I'm not sure it was supposed to be especially funny, but here, I love Lucy, I love Andy, I love Hawk, but I didn't have to be honest. I didn't laugh too much on that one section.
I had some trouble, and this bit, Lucy with the cell phones. It was great to see. Okay, so we're talking about a different Sheriff Truman,
right? Frank Truman.
So that was fun to establish, and the great played by the great Robert Forster, who's terrific.
But maybe if we had more of Badalamente's score, that would kind of get me in the right mood to laugh at some of these scenes. Because once again, there really wasn't much classic score types, like I would say, except in the Laura Palmer theme, which came back when Bobby showed up.
Yeah, and
so did you laugh?
No.
If you didn't laugh at the cell phone bit and you didn't laugh at the chocolate bunny bit, did you enjoy? A lot of people enjoyed Wally Brando. What is your take on Wally Brando?
I rather enjoyed Wally Brando, and Michael Cera did a really nice job playing him, but there were a lot of swings and misses, before that, and I don't know what's going on with Andy's hair, but it definitely seems to be styled for comic effect. Lucy jumping, being yanked out of her chair when Frank Truman walks in.
Yeah,
a lot of the jokes they're going for are really, really big.
And Lynch said he didn't like that season 2 of Twin Peaks got so big and wacky.
Yeah,
he's doing some big and wacky swings himself here.
Yeah, he's. Part of what I didn't love about, just to jump back for a second, Denise and Coop were telling jokes and hot flashes.
Denise and Gordon.
Oh, I'm sorry, Denise and Gordon. Thanks, and Cole. Yeah, so the hot flashes and those jokes, not great. Now, the one thing that Andy says that might be potentially important, I don't know, but what he's talking about, he says the line, it keeps happening again and again, and what he's talking about is Lucy being confused.
Right.
25 years after cell phones have been invented by cell phones, but it's happening again is a line
it's a loaded line
in this show, So, and if in fact Lucy and Andy and the fact that the Twin Peaks Sheriff Station is going to become actually important in this the larger spiritual story that we're telling, I think that some of the the wackier sight gags are going to be much, much more palatable to me. But right now, I'm not loving them. So the command center, all of a sudden, we've got 75 cops now.
No,
well, there was but there was a bunch. It was a big room.
There were always on the old show. There was always extras roaming around.
Right.
And so now it feels like they're trying to flesh them out. We've got Maggie working as the dispatch operator. We've got Chad, who's a big jerk cop, and we've got Deputy Jesse. Chad, is a jerk cop because he kind of mocked the log lady. And there's one thing you can't do on Twin Peaks.
You don't do that.
Is you can't mock the log lady by saying, I'm going to go talk to my pine cones, Chad.
Things don't end well for people who mock the log lady.
We find out from Bobby that they're Chinese designer drugs coming down from Canada. Is Bobby a deputy or a drug dealer? He's a deputy. Well, that's the thing. I don't think Bobby's doing these drugs, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Chad is. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Deputy Jesse is. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that guy Shelley made eyes with at the Roadhouse.
Balthazar
Getty's character, he's not involved somehow. Were you surprised that Bobby was a cop? That Bobby has joined the right side of the law? Mork?
I enjoyed it. I was glad to see it. I enjoyed it. And I do agree. The moment when he walks into the room and he sees the evidence and he sees Laura's prom picture, that was a great moment.
That's strong. And the score is there. The score we love. I think it helps set the mood. Mm-hmm. During this, you see Lucy and Andy hold hands as Bobby's breaking down. That is what I'm used to. I hate to say that it's so nostalgia, but I love it. I love it. And that's when we find out, as you pointed out, the Coop was the last one to see Major Briggs. Seems a bit odd if he saw Major Briggs, as we know from the secret history, in the Briggs house. But then Briggs left the house without his wife or Bobby seeing him.
Right.
And Briggs died in a fire.
Exactly.
Very pointed thing to happen in the world of Twin Peaks is when fire takes you.
Yeah. And here's something that it feels like it might have happened. We don't know the exact sequence, but it doesn't seem as if Briggs died immediately after seeing Cooper, who we now believe is Mr. C.
Right, the next day, at least. Yeah.
The next day. So, and we've seen Briggs perform under all sorts of extenuating circumstances, particularly in Secret History of Twin Peaks in the books, where he's sort of rushing in there. He doesn't have too much time left. So would he not have maybe contacted Cole at this point? Coop's gone missing. He's been shot. He was in the hospital. Maybe it feels like that's a connection that should have been made that it doesn't feel like it was. And
well, you assume we're going to find out more about this, don't you?
I would assume, but it does. I mean, I hope so. It's a question mark, and yeah, it is a question mark for sure.
Here's a question for you. Will we see Wally Brando again? Or was this just a flyby, and is his room really going to turn into a study?
I hope it does, because if anybody needs to study,
be turned into a study.
If anybody needs to study, it's Lucy and or Andy.
Oh, yeah, they have gotten somehow. They were always kind of sweet and simple, but now there's kind of active dumbness happening.
And I think what's missing is before there was the tension of the will they or won't they, and now there's
what about the tension of will they or won't they turn this room into a study?
That is probably the type of tension that is much more relevant these days.
We mentioned Frank Truman, Robert Forster.
Which brings up Brando, Wally Brando. He wants to talk to Sheriff Truman.
Right. Who's not feeling well, apparently.
Who's not feeling well. And Harry Truman.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. And yet they're just hanging out in the parking lot. And they're having a really nice reconnection. And so it does raise the question, what the hell is going on with Harry?
Let's hope he's not puking Garmonbozia. Now, I don't think that would be happening to him, but we're going to have to find out. Do you like Robert Forster? We really didn't get to spend much time with him, but he's a new character. I like him.
I don't love him just yet. When we met Harry having to kind of deal with this weirdo Cooper,
right? And also deal with Andy. Remember how
Lucy?
Yeah, remember how Harry dealt with Andy, where he's like, "Is this going to happen every darn time?"
Right.
And I just can't picture Harry S. Truman hearing Wally Brando give this speech and not kind of rolling his eyes and getting to it. Those kind of recognizable Harry responses, even though Harry's a wonderful bookhouse boy, good guy.
For sure.
I think he would have had some, like, okay, Wally, what in the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah, I mean, between these two, I thought when we learned that Robert Forster would be in the show, I kind of pictured him as Harry's sort of older, meaner brother, who'd suffer fools even less than Harry did.
Right.
But he seems to be a little sweeter, a little kinder, and whatever. I mean, this is 25 years later. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm very, Frank Truman is sitting there and. I really appreciate you saying those kind words about my brother, but I'm not going to tell you where he is. Let's not go visit him. Let's not give him a call.
Nah.
Let's think about him.
Yeah.
But you know what? Your room is about to be turned into a study. You have bigger priorities right now. But no, I mean, I enjoyed that. I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more if Andy and Lucy weren't clutching their 20-something-year-old child.
24-year-old
child like that. They were very proud, and God bless them. But yeah, I enjoyed that scene, but it just raises questions about what the hell is going on with Harry. Are we going to see him? Are we not?
We don't know. He's not on the cast list. Now, people have already appeared in these 4 parts whose names weren't on the cast list. The actress who played Bunella, she wasn't on the cast list, but we shall have to see. We all want Michael Ontkean to show up, because we love Harry S. Truman. We want, nothing wrong with nostalgia. Let's see him.
Well, you know what? I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about how I'd like to see Harry. Yeah. And as much as I'd like to see Mr. C and Coop getting together and having a chat, I'd like to see Harry and Mr. C getting together and having a chat. Oh,
hell yeah.
And whatever that would turn out to be. Maybe they can't tell by the time these two, completely different souls show up in Twin Peaks and we can't tell them apart. And maybe it's Harry who can tell them apart. I don't know. But, Coop saved Harry a couple of times. Harry saved Coop a couple of times. I'd like to see that dynamic, continue somehow because they're a great team.
The final bit, I don't know how we saved this to last. The final bit we got to talk about. Jacoby's art project.
Well,
do you want to talk about this? Jacoby is spray painting these shovels gold, infuse the machine with gold. And this is one of those times, I didn't feel too much what I call languid Lynch in parts 3 and 4, but this part, it did. I just want to say this to our listeners. So what is going through my head? Hey, it's Dr. Jacoby. I love Dr. Jacoby. Okay, he's painting these shovels gold. Okay, he's getting them. I get that visual information. Okay, he's created this cool little contraption that allows him to paint these shovels gold.
Guitar pedal and some old bicycles or something.
Right.
Or a sewing machine or whatever.
And then I think, okay, well, I've got that visual information. I see it. Mm-hmm. But the image, people talk about art, Lynch being such a beautiful visual storyteller.
Right.
This image isn't that captivating. I don't have that wonderful score that I'm used to kind of set a mood.
Yeah.
And so this is a time when, just to be completely honest, my mind starts to wander. And so that's how I feel. Once again, I hope listeners don't have this languid Lynch. Listeners, on our feedback show, write and tell me when you're seeing this scene of Jacoby painting these shovels, and let's be honest, it goes on for what I consider a while.
Right.
Are you just relaxed? Are you like, okay?
Well, but are you thinking about, so much of Jacoby's personality and what he was into, Polynesia and relaxing and Mai
He loved
Tais.
Hawaii. Yeah.
He loved Hawaii, and now we're seeing him in a cabin, in the woods, in like a jumpsuit, like a painter's outfit.
Right.
There's no Hawaiian shirts. There's nothing tropical in sight. Mm-hmm. I would hope that means something. I don't, because it was such a big part of Jacoby's visual cues that we're not seeing it now. So what does that mean? I don't know. But Jacoby's been does this track? I actually don't think this tracks with. I mean, we know Jacoby lost his license.
According to the Secret History of Twin Peaks, this isn't. If you haven't read that book, listeners, we've been dropping a lot of spoilers, but we find out in the book that Jacoby lost his license.
Well, he sort of voluntarily gave it up.
He told some of the crazy things he was doing.
Yeah.
With Laura Palmer and his behavior and how he felt just heartbroken that he couldn't recognize this poor girl who was broken, that her father was doing this to her, which should have been one of the first things he figured out.
Right.
And so is this him attempting to repair his own soul? You would only get that idea, and the only way I could come up with that idea is because I read this book. You shouldn't have to read a book to be able to kind of infuse a storyline with something. Well, you tell me, what did you think of the scene, if anything? Well, what do you think he's doing? Did you enjoy the scene? Tell me about it.
No, I didn't enjoy it. The only thing I can think that he's doing is, the only time I've ever seen gold shovels is when, there's some sort of ceremonial, first, when you're building a new building.
A groundbreaking.
Thank you, a groundbreaking. And so, Are they rebuilding the mill? Are they building up what exactly in Twin Peaks?
We're going to finally open the Ghostwood Estates project.
Is Dr. Jacoby now a real estate speculating partner of Ben and Jerry? I don't know. So I'd like to think that it means something, that it's not just...
He's going to break new ground in psychology.
Oh, he already has, though. He already has.
And he broke it the first way by losing his license.
Well, that's step one. That is
right, step one. You always start at the beginning.
Look, Jacoby is the Jack Parsons of modern psychiatry, so I don't know where exactly that's going. I'm okay with a little bit of it, though. I'll tell you what, I'd rather see Jacoby doing something I don't understand than Lucy, falling over in her chair because, a cell phone still confuses her, which I just don't buy.
Listeners, our next podcast is all feedback. If you disagree with us, once again, we would prefer you don't unsubscribe. Tell us why. Tell us, convince us, give us your thoughts. We've had so many new listeners now that the show is back. We want to welcome them aboard and say that we are taking a critical look at this. We hope you enjoy it. We hope we're not trying to, take your favorite thing and then poke holes in it. We're just explaining our own.
Well, but we're also trying to, we're seeing some crazy stuff. We're trying to make sense of it. We've been looking at all sorts of different things. We've looked at Fire Walk with Me. We've looked at the book. We've looked at the original series. We've looked at the missing pieces. In our minds, all of these things are connected. We don't know, but let's find out together and let's see how it shakes out.
So go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/double P podcast. That's the word double, the single letter P, the word podcast, plural, facebook.com/double P podcast. My name is Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM, at Fit and Trim on Twitter.
Extraordinary at Twitter is where you can find Mork. That's extraordinary with the W in front of the final R.
And until next time.
Sweeps.
Hello.
And the damned. 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 Damned.